A Memoir of World War II. I read Europa Europa by Solomon Perel, a memoir about his survival of the Holocaust by pretending to be a part of the Nazi regime even though he is Jewish. A true story, it was turned into a film that won a Golden Globe Award. He is now a motivational speaker who tours Europe and shares his wartime experiences with others. Born in Peine, Germany in 1925, Solomon Perel is a young Jewish boy who lives with his mother and father, two brothers, and a sister. As early as age 10, he began to experience the effects of the Nazis coming to power when he is expelled from school due to the enforcement of the Nuremberg racial laws. As things grew worse in Germany, he fled to Poland with just his older brother. They shortly get separated, and in his search for his brother, he ends up in a Russian city that the Nazis soon invade with the intent to execute all of the Jews he is accompanied by. Solomon miraculously convinces the soldier that he is German and is transported to the division of the army he was to serve in as a translator at the war front. He surprisingly meets many likable people along the way and fits in very well with the Nazis on the outside. However, he longs for his Jewish identity and struggles with the double life he is living on the inside. Later on, he ends up at a Hitler Youth School and must remain calm and hide the fact that he's Jewish, despite the very difficult circumstances. Through his true and unique story, Solomon's constant interpretation of what he is going through gives insight to the complicated life he has that's full of sadness and struggle. These passages connect to the thesis because they both portray that the Nazi influence and how desperate Solomon is to survive are the external factors for him. They rip him away from his Jewish identity and force him to find it anew so that he won't get killed. The passages connect to each other because the first passage on page 88 takes place while Solomon has just arrived at his Hitler Youth School. The second passage on page 158 takes place after Solomon has been at the school for several months. In both passages, his inner identity conflicts with how he must act under severe circumstances. Page 88 exhibits his quiet adjustment as his transformation into finding his new identity begins, while the later passages proceed from the perspective of his new identity, though he still struggles to mask his past. After a brief conversation with his new roommate Gerard, who also ironically happens to be from Peine, Solomon adjusts to the anxiety that accompanies him at his new, dangerous school. His two identities battle silently inside him, but Joseph Periel must be shown in order to survive. This first paragraph exhibits his Solomon Periel identity emerging. In this next paragraph, his Joseph Periel identity emerges and actually masks the prior. These two identities present juxtaposition because Solomon, the Jewish part of him, tosses and turns and is worried about the future. However, he jumps right into his Nazi identity Yosef, who is cheery and clearly has no anxiety. This is a facade compared to his previously exposed thoughts, but it is necessary for this identity to cover his Jewish one in order to survive. This contrast emphasizes the constant fear he is in and how much he is relying on his fake identity. He then begins to speak in the third person, exhibiting how distant he has become from his Jewish identity. Solomon must take a step back to see how much he's really changed. It's almost as if he has lost touch with his Jewish identity and is an outsider looking in on his own life. This part here is when he brings up a moment of weakness from the past. By emphasizing that such behavior would never happen now, it is evident that he is hardened emotionally and cannot let things get to him anymore if he wants to survive. Down here, his use of the adjective intoxicating to describe lawns and flower beds, things that are supposed to be cheery, he reveals the true disturbance he feels with being at the Hitler Youth School even though he must act as if it is a great thing. Lastly, there is the irony when he is humming on the way to the washroom, because that is a place of significant danger for him. Throughout his story, he has explained that his circumcision could give him away for being Jewish and could get him killed. This irony reminds the reader of the extent to which he has to fake his happiness in order to remain alive. After feeling very lonesome around Christmas school break, because he has no family to go visit, Solomon decides to visit the Lodz ghetto in hopes to find his parents. This is an extremely risky thing to do, and it ends up opening his eyes to the true terrors of the Nazis that he is previously oblivious to. This first paragraph contains lots of great imagery. As Solomon describes the scene of the corpses, he calls it the most depressing and most shocking sight he has ever seen. The fact that these descriptions are not exaggerations prove how deeply affected he is by witnessing the murder of the Jewish people. Other adjectives such as rumbling, haphazardly, naked, and emaciated add to the picture he is painting in the reader's mind and prove how disturbing it all is for him. He then relates this awful situation back to his own life, realizing that it very well could happen to his own mother and father. As he comes to this realization, it exhibits the connection he still has with his Jewish identity, despite almost completely transforming into a member of the Nazi regime. No matter how far he has parted from his Jewish identity, his family is what drives him to remain connected to it. He also struggles with his faith. He's losing a little bit of faith, which equals the loss of his connection with his Jewish identity because the two intertwine. It is hard for him to keep the faith that attached him to his Jewish identity when he sees such horrible things happening. When he says, "I wanted to throw myself down on the floor and on the trolley. I wanted to scream." It illustrates how his id is his Jewish identity. His old self has constant impulses to react to such awful scenes, but he must calm himself down and once again only exhibit his Nazi identity. This is why the streetcar is a symbol, because when it continued on its route, because although he is deeply saddened by what he has just seen, his life must continue on its own route away from his parents. Lastly, when Solomon says, "I had no place to go, nobody I could turn to," he exhibits his great loneliness. As he rekindles his connection with his Jewish identity, it becomes evident that the only way to escape being lonesome is through the bond he has with his family and the Jewish people. As Solomon Perel tells his intricate and emotional story, he proves that independent aspects of a person's life affect the process of finding their identity. He does an amazing job of portraying his deep internal struggle that greatly impacted his ability to come to terms with his identity. In a well-written, detailed story of his journey, he successfully portrays his purpose. Although a heart-wrenching story, I would definitely recommend Europa Europa as an outside reading option. I enjoyed analyzing the dual identity in the story and how he somehow maintains a calm tone throughout the whole story, no matter how extreme of a situation he was in. I did not enjoy reading about the Holocaust because it is a very upsetting topic, but it is necessary to learn about. Thanks for watching.